With me now, Democratic Representative Dan Kildee of Michigan, who is currently inside his district, which includes Flint. To what your colleague said, do you feel, I mean, everyone's walking around Washington right now in the wake of this Woodward book, an anonymous op-ed, and it seems like the open secret is now out in the open. Like, is this the way that people in Washington understand the president, that fundamentally he's unfit and can't actually dispatch his duties and everyone's just going to work around that?
Yeah, I mean, the things that Bob Woodward wrote, the thing that the anonymous author or authors wrote, is essentially common knowledge in Washington among Democrats and Republicans, among people inside and outside the White House. This is an open secret. They have to deny it when it's written on a piece of paper because the president operates on the assumption that he can say anything and do anything, and the two don't have to match at all. He's a man-child. And that's what we're dealing with. Congressman
Gutierrez talked about, how he's not focused. But it also seems that in these circumstances, the less focus he has, the better. I mean, honestly, do you want the president to really focus on really crucial life and death matters like hurricane preparedness right now?
Well,
or do you want other people to handle it?
Well, we want the president of the United States to be capable of focusing on these big questions. And that's the struggle that we face. Now, this particular president, of course, I mean, we don't know what his values are. We don't know what he believes because he's a purely transactional person. He has no core beliefs. He has no core values. But just because I mean, we don't have big problems in this country. It's interesting that we're talking about Puerto Rico. The night of the State of the Union, I ran into the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and she recognized me from this network. And she looked at me and she pointed and she said, you know what, you and I have something in common. We both represent people that this administration has completely overlooked and completely forgotten. In Puerto Rico, they say that it's okay and it's over when it's not over. In Flint, they say it's okay and it's over when it's not over. They say the water's fine when it isn't. In Puerto Rico, they say nobody died when people did die. They can deny, he can deny facts in front of his very face and go on with his day. That's the frightening thing.
This is, in this case, in the case of Puerto Rico and in Flint, is where you see just how stark all this is and how high the stakes are for competent governance, right? I mean, these are, Puerto Rico and Flint, I think it's fair to say, are the site of the two biggest American governing disasters of the last 5 years.
No question
I think that's
ongoing disasters.
Ongoing disasters. About what has happened here and the drinking water, has this administration been helpful? Do you feel like the federal government has gotten your back or helped this community?
No, and in fact, they did a sort of moment of celebration when they delivered, finally, in the first few months of their administration, the resources that I and our senators got and that President Obama committed to. But beyond that, they've done virtually nothing.
You just said the water here is not safe to drink.
No one trusts it, and for good reason.
Right. That to me, that gets us something real key here. And right now we're watching, right now there's all kinds of ways in which the federal government is going to issue orders and local governments are going to issue orders to those folks in the Carolinas to evacuate, right? And there's a question about whether those folks trust what the government says. What I've observed being around talking to people in Flint is the trust is entirely broken.
Yeah, it is. Entirely broken.
No one can possibly trust the government, particularly the state government, federal government, after what happened.
Yeah, and fair, people in Flint, for good reason, don't make distinctions between levels and layers of government.
Right.
They were told the water was safe when the government knew that it was not safe, knew that it was dangerous, knew that it would hurt people. How can they be expected to trust anything anyone says? Flint is not some sort of an anomaly. Flint is a warning to the rest of the country that if we don't figure out a way to take back control of our government and have people in those positions that we trust, we cannot ever rebuild this trust. It's interesting. You're talking about this president. Our Constitution, the framers, anticipated the potential of a rogue president. And I just have to say this. Donald Trump by himself is not the problem. And this is where I think the moment that occurs to us right now is so critical. The problem is the people who were supposed to put a check on that president to ensure that the trust was still there, that people could have some kind of faith in their government, are the people in the Congress of the United States. And the majority in Congress, the Republicans, have essentially handed their voting cards to Donald Trump and said, look, you're in charge. You're completely in charge. They have wrapped their arms so tightly around his ankles, they will go anywhere he takes them.
I think today on September 11th, when people are thinking about the Americans we lost in the attack 17 years ago, around 3,000 Americans who were murdered on that day, and about thinking about oversight, right? I mean, there was the 9/11 Commission. There was, how did this happen? And a huge commission was put together to get to the bottom. There's 3,000 Americans that died in Puerto Rico, and as far as I can tell, nothing. There's been no commission. There's been very few hearings. No sustained inquiry into how it is that 3,000 Americans died on this government's watch.
You know, one of the people in the White House who's never been threatened with the loss of his job, who's been there throughout, who whispers in Donald Trump's ear, is a guy who early in the administration spoke a moment of truth that really tells the story of this administration. Stephen Miller. He stood up and said, the president's authority not be questioned. The president will not be questioned. That was really that was a moment that now has stuck with us for all this time, because the position that they take is that we can do anything we want and you can't touch us.
And yet what's crazily surreal is that at the same time they say that, everyone in that White House apparently is just like, get a load of this guy as soon as he leaves the room.
Yeah, it is true. But you know what? They don't deserve a pat on the back. Right, even whoever wrote that op-ed, they don't deserve a pat on the back. What they need to do is step outside of that White House and say, you know what? This government is broken. It is threatened, and Congress needs to do its job and rein this guy in. We have lots of different tools available to us, and people talk all about, you know, the 25th Amendment. We talk all about the potential for impeachment. The truth of the matter is, like tomorrow when we go into session, we have tools right in front of us to tamp down the authority of the president and tell him he can't do these crazy things that he's doing. So impeachment, yeah, whatever, 20th Amendment, whatever. Do our jobs that we swore an oath to today, and we can rein in the danger that this president is bringing to
My
us.
favorite detail of the schedule this week, where you work in the United States Capitol, we're 56 days out. There's a hurricane bearing down on the East Coast. We're reeling from these revelations about the White House. Tomorrow, there's going to be a floor vote on another round of tax cuts.
They're moving the tax bill, tax cut 2.0.
Do they have a hearing or anything?
They're trying to get it through Ways and Means and get it to the floor as fast as they can.
That's really astounding. Representative Dan Kildee, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.